Hello everybody, and welcome back to my C++ programming tutorial. This is part 9, and today we're going to be starting our lessons on loops in the code. It's my favorite topic, can't tell you why. But today we're going to be starting with the for loop. There's three main types of loops. There's actually more than that, but three simple main types of loops that we're going to be covering. To start with is the for loop. It's really simple, and we're just going to jump right into it. Now what a loop does is it creates, when your program is running, like we've mentioned before, it'll just run one line after another. What a for loop does is, say this was a for loop, and it's not, but pretend it is. It'll actually run the code and then loop back and keep going until you tell it to stop. And then it'll continue on to the rest of the code. This is really useful in some cases, and we'll use practical examples of all these loops in the future. But to start with here, we create the for loop, and it's just the word for, parentheses, and then the closing and opening brackets. And then in here we need our variable, and this is going to be our conditional variable. So we can do a couple of things with this. We can either create it here and just create any random variable and set it equal to 0, or any number, and then we can just create, or say I. Or we can actually create it in here. We can take I and set it to 0. Or we can create it in here completely and say int I equals 0. It is now just locked into that for loop. It can't be used anywhere else, which is the best way to do things. We're going to create another variable, int amount, and this is going to be the amount of numbers that the user wants to enter. And then I'm going to say cout how many numbers. Okay. Now I'm trying to think of a better example for this, because you know what? Let's take a teacher. So say a teacher is needing to enter a bunch of grades into the system and giving their letter score. Okay, well, what's going to happen is she's going to have to enter multiple times, and you don't want to keep running the program over and over again. Do you need to enter? And then we'll close that off there. We'll say cin. We'll give it the amount, right? So we'll say, how many grades do you need to enter? And we'll say this for loop is going to keep looping until I is less than or equal to amount. Then we're going to use a semicolon. Now what this is this takes arguments. It takes 3 arguments. The first one is the integer that we're going to be comparing. The second one is a comparison. Once this is not true anymore, it'll exit the loop. And then the third one is we're going to increment that variable. So we can either do I plus equals I, or we can just do I equals I plus I. But like we previously went over, the easiest way to do that is just do I plus plus. So now we have a for loop, and we just need to let it know what to do. So we're going to say cout. We're going to say enter grade. Okay, simple enough. We'll get more complicated into this in the future. Okay, enter grade, and then we'll say cin. We're going to create another integer. Let's create a float grade. So we'll cin to the float. Grade, not just float, grade. Cin to the grade, and then we'll say cout, and we'll say grade number, and then we'll print I. Grade number I is, and then we'll put grade and then we can say end L. Okay, let's test this out and see how this works, because there's something that we're gonna need to cover here. So we'll run the program, and it opens up and it says how many grades do you need to enter, and let's say we need to enter 4 grades. Okay, enter grade. Let's say 100%. It'll say grade number 0. 0 is 100%. Okay, we'll continue on. Grade number 1 is 50. Grade number 2 is 20. Grade number let's enter another, let's just say 60. Grade number 3 is 60. But I've entered 4 grades, and it's still asking me for another grade. So what we need to do here is, there's a couple ways to fix this. The way the for loop works is it sets I equals to 0. So initially when it runs through, I here is going to be equal to 0. And then once it's done, it'll increment it. So it'll add 1. So then I equals 1. 1 is still less than amount. Well, what happens is we can just say less than amount instead of equal. It'll still say grade 1. Or we can say less than equal to amount, and we'll just keep I at 1. So when we... I messed that up. So, and there we go. So when we run this now, what's going to happen is this: how many grades do you need to enter? We'll say 4. Enter grade, 100%. Grade number 1 is 100%. Enter grade, 50. Grade number 2 is 50. Say 60, 70, and then it says press any key to continue. So it allowed us to enter 4 grades. Now this is a very simple example of the for loop. I'm going to continue on to the other loops, which are the while and do loops, and then I'll be doing a tutorial on how to use all of those together, and that's going to be essentially like the first chapter of these tutorials. Because we've learned a lot, I want to give a practical example on how to use them all together to kind of recap on what we learned. So hope to see you around next episode. We're going to be covering the while loop, and bye-bye.